Nepal in crisis, the constitution about to expire and there are no signs of political agreement about replacing it. What's behind the dangerous stalemate and what is going to happen next? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Mike Hanna. Nepal's political leaders have been locked in a series of marathon meetings attempting to avert a crisis that could throw the country into political and civil chaos. When the country's parliament or constitutional assembly was elected in 2008, it was tasked with drawing up a new constitution within 2 years. That period's about to expire and there's no new constitution in view. Joining us now are our guests. In London, Kana Shahi, he's chairman of the Progressive Nepalese Society in the UK. Also in London, Lauren says he's an associate professor of politics at the School of Oriental and African Studies. And in Kathmandu, Santosh Shah, he hosts the Nepali TV program Power Talks and is the editor of Youth Asia magazine. Let's begin with Kana Shahi in London. This is only its second anniversary, and yet the Republic seems to be under real threat.
All of political parties, including, of course, those parties who are in government and, opposition party, must work hard together to build, consensus that, they can draft constitution in time. See, so in this case, I do believe, government must be more responsible to bring all of political parties, especially main opposition party, so that they can work together. See, otherwise, I think there will be some problem.
Santosh Shah in Kathmandu, doesn't appear that the politicians are getting any closer together. The talks, as yet, not producing any result.
In the last 3 weeks, there has been several talks within the parties and among the parties, and most of the meetings have come without a conclusion. Tomorrow is the deadline of the 2 years of the timeline given for the constitution drafting. Tomorrow they will come out with a consensus, but not that with the drafting of the constitution, but unanimously both the parties in the government and in the opposition will sign for an extension of 6 months, which they can legitimize through voting themselves in. But a larger question will stay whether the people are going to accept that, who voted them only for 2 years.
So agreement reached. The opposition had been insistent that there would be no extension unless the Prime Minister stepped down.
The Prime Minister has no reason or has no enough opposition to force him to resign. There was a movement done by the Maoists throughout the country, especially in Kathmandu from May 1st, and that didn't deter the Prime Minister even by an inch. The Prime Minister has lost elections from 2 constituencies for this Constitution Assembly, and at the same time he has been facing a lot of alienation from within his own party, yet he holds a very powerful position in the country. So it is clear that the Prime Minister has certain unnatural power with which he has retained himself, and that's not going to buzz tomorrow in the next 24 hours.
Lauren says we're dealing here in effect with the unprecedented. We are dealing with a new interim constitution, a republic that is only 2 years old, and talk about a constitution that was supposed to have been written over the past 24 months.
Yes, well, I'm not quite sure that it's unprecedented in Nepalese politics, because Nepalese politics are filled with examples of deadlocks of this type. It's also not unprecedented in other countries, such as Bangladesh, where you have very disparate perspectives on what the solution would be. So I think that in the case of Nepal, it was implicit. I was there a few weeks ago that there will be an agreement to extend the period by 6 months, which is what has happened. And the problem then becomes is what's going to happen in 6 months. I happen to have very negative or pessimistic perspectives on what is likely to happen in 6 months. Namely, it will be in the same situation that we are in right now, trying to have meetings at the last minute and no resolution in mind. And so my concern would be at what point will the military step in to put an end to this?
Kana Shahi in London, let's put that to you. Is there a threat that the military could step in at some stage?
I don't know, but if that will happen, that will be, honestly, masses, people will not tolerate that one anymore. Any kind of threat, which, that threat, threat for the republic, for people's achievement, if any forces, not just, I'm not talking about any particular forces, any kind of forces which, threats, which, undermines the people's achievement, that kind of threat, will be, challenged by all sorts of means, I think. So I don't think so people will, tolerate that one.
Senator Shah, let's pick up on that particular point. What is the mood in Nepal? How are the people feeling? This is now the 10th government in 10 years. Is there a sense of despair, of desperation, of political disillusion?
Absolutely. People are really nervous and worried right now, as you can see from my own face. We are very nervous because from tomorrow onwards, there is a larger question of uncertainty. And I would also like to touch slightly upon the Nepal army taking over. The probabilities are very less. I mean, it's a chance. There's a chance that it could be an option, but I don't see that as a possibility. Because if we look at the history of Nepal army, they have positioned themselves always neutrally. Even when they were robbed of the title from Royal Nepalese Army to Nepalese Army, they did it very smoothly. There was no opposition from their side. And they're very clear about staying out of the politics. Last year, when the then Prime Minister Prachanda messed up with the whole army issue of ousting the chief of army over some mundane reasons, even then the Maoists didn't make any move, which was kind of looked at. So there is no question of people not accepting the army's move because they're not going to move at all.
Lawrence Sayers, I see that you're shaking your head there. Do you not agree with this?
Well, it's not a matter of agreement. It's a matter, when I speak to individuals in Nepal, of course I can't tell you who, but namely people who are connected to the military, the mood within the military ranks, especially among the top leaders, is to actually take over at some point. They're trying to make a decision as to when that's going to happen. Obviously, right now it would be too premature to do so because the conditions are not intolerable enough for that takeover to be successful. But the chiefs of the army and the armed forces are quite keen to determine when they're likely to take over. Probably in some form of bloodless coup, very similar to what happened a few years ago in Bangladesh. I think that's the model they're looking at, where they would dissolve the government, try to hold an interim place, and then call elections eventually. That's what's going to happen in Nepal, mostly as a result because the Maoists are likely to react very negatively at some point. I mean, they have staged a number of protests, but they're also talking about retraining the cadres. That takes about 6 months or so to actually to bring back fighters to a position where they can fight successfully against the armed forces. So the armed forces are aware of this retraining that is going on, and so at some point they will step in. I mean, I have no doubts about that. It will be unfortunate, but it will happen.
Let's just pause here and put this discussion into context. The 11th hour talks happening in Nepal are the result of years of political upheaval. It all started in 1995 when the Maoists launched a violent campaign aimed at abolishing the monarchy. A decade's conflict ended by what is called the Comprehensive Peace Agreement, or CPA, in 2006. The following year, former Maoist rebels became a part of the political mainstream by joining the interim government. In 2008, the Constituent Assembly was set up with the Maoists winning the bulk of the seats. Monarchy was abolished and Nepal was declared a federal democratic republic. In 2009, though, the Maoists left the government after other parties opposed former rebel fighters joining the National Army. Since then, they've been in the opposition, carrying out strikes, for example, in an attempt to oust the ruling coalition government.